Okay, so this is going to be a really sped up version of what I was doing to model my assassin bot for realsies, not just block him out. So the first thing I'm doing here is figuring out how to cut this jaw line. And I'm trying to do a little bit of a tricky setup here where I just created a part of a cylinder, and then I use that with a boolean to cut that shape out perfectly. Of course, there would have been other ways to do that, such as just moving the verts up and down individually until they looked pretty straight, but sometimes you try to use a shortcut. All the stuff I do in this video is stuff that I've tried before or done some version of before, but you still kind of are making things up on the go for every piece of the character. And here I'm just trying, this is kind of a waste of time, honestly, but I keep going back and forth deciding how I'm going to attach in this kind of eye visor part. Tried a boolean, then I undid it, and then I did a boolean again. And the problem was I kept getting weird stretching. So if you are getting weird stretching when you either merge things together or bridge things or whatever, I'd usually just delete one of the faces that are giving you problems and then just bridge them back again. I'm just kind of trying to make the top of the head there. See there, I was getting some more stretching, but all I did was merge verts, and that helped. And then use detached components to separate the jaw, and then test out what it would look like just by moving the pivot point. Now, building this stuff on a cylinder is kind of a pain in the ass sometimes, just because any little thing you do could make it not look like a perfect cylinder anymore. Here I'm just experimenting with some stuff in the visor. Now, I'd spent probably way too much time trying to figure out this bottom jaw for no real good reason. So, take this part with a grain of salt, because ultimately it's probably not really even that important. And plus, spoiler alert, I end up kind of like carving out the inside of the jaw anyway so that it fits around the neck. So here I was just kind of doing a lot of irritating playing around with how to get rid of a triangle that kept forming. And it's not necessary. I mean, it is possible to get rid of the triangle, but it's not necessarily possible to get like an ideal corner or whatever when you have this piece that's simultaneously supposed to be part of a cylinder but also has to be angular. And I'm testing out some beveling as I'm going along here. I'm not keeping any of it, though. A lot of these lines aren't straight, but, you don't want to waste time, straightening out edges or whatever until you are satisfied. Now here I finally decided to wisen up and just duplicated these two pieces so I could figure out what to do with them. And that's where I finally made the realization that I need to make the jaw not all the way thick through and just be this double side or like a front piece here so that it wouldn't intersect with the jaw. I'm already going to have to figure out how to get the jaw to, intersect with the neck, because I'm already going to have to figure out how to get the neck to intersect with the head as it is. Playing around with there a little bit, messing with normals. Testing out, you want to test out things. So here I'm even seeing if that's bevelable, and I'm seeing if I can reduce the poly count on the top. Not really important at the moment. I decided that I would probably just end up putting in some sort of piece to make it look like the neck has some sort of attachment point. And then I also decided to change the way the face looks anyway, so almost all that stuff I was doing earlier was kind of pointless because I ended up just cutting a hole out. Now here I'm starting the body, and you'll notice that I didn't actually finish the head, but I just wanted to move on because I was starting to get tired of it. So here I'm starting the body, and you saw that I started with a cylinder, and I really only kept a tiny part of that cylinder to get the curvature for the front. And sometimes you just have to use polygon primitives for that one little part. It's not going to become the whole thing or anything. Now, here I'm attempting to kind of visualize the shape of this whole body just by kind of carving out from this cube, although I'm getting a little stuck by doing that. Because my problem is I didn't really visualize the character having like a hard rectangular bottom. But then at the same time, I'm not really sure what else it would look like now that I see it. And since the attachment of the arm is going to be an integral part of the torso, or the chest, that's why I stopped working on the other parts, and I started figuring out this where this hole was going to be. And there, what I just did there was I duplicated a whole bunch of different cylinders that had different amounts of edges so that I could save them for later. So one with 8, one with 12, one with 16. Sometimes using match transforms to get things matched up. This is, again, sometimes these parts are annoying, where you just have to figure out how many edges you need and slap yourself in the face because you realized that there was some easier way to do something else the whole time. But, and the edges radiating off of that arm socket aren't very pretty, for lack of a better term, but it doesn't really matter unless it actually affects the appearance of your model. Now, I'm deciding to do something here. I'm kind of just preemptively setting then I realized I could just duplicate the head and make my life easier. But I'm going to have that be the top of the body for later. I'm adding in some topology there. But it's not always the best idea to add too much geometry in until you need it, because that makes things more complicated when you are trying to move components around or whatnot. Here I'm just kind of testing out what it would look like with softer edges. Here I'm looking, I decided to go look at a different design for the arm, or for the shoulder. Instead of always just going with a regular ball joint, I decided to try this kind of like disc that's still based off a sphere, so that's just the middle of a sphere with the top and bottom chopped off. And I actually am about to try a thing, which you'll see in a second here, where I'm putting in some bones, and I'm just going to do some really basic skinning, and that's why I added in all those all those edge loops. And I kind of was thinking that maybe the shoulder could just be this like thicker casing, and then the rest of the arm would just be this thinner tube. And so that's why I keep trying out that, and I try moving the joint around a few times. As you'll see here, I'm trying a thing called move skin to joints, although that doesn't really help because it might make the weight painting messed up, so I ended up having to reskin it anyway. What am I doing here? Oh, I was trying to figure out how to make it not possible to select the image plane, which I could have easily done by just making it on a display layer, so I don't know why I didn't do that in this video. I'm recording this after the fact, in case you're wondering. So I think I ended up getting tired of... I got tired of messing around with that, so I decided to still make a shoulder, but still keep the kind of like tube idea. Now here, I'm going about this really inefficiently in this part. And again, this is all with the benefit of hindsight. But I basically am just going to try to make this like a clamp as some sort of explanation as to how the shoulder is attached onto the clavicle. And I'm about to spend a lot more time than I probably should on this, and I probably also should have started just by using a Boolean to get the general shape down. And you'll notice that a lot of times when I'm modeling, I'll end up just chopping everything in half or even into quarters, just so that I can just model on one little area and then mirror it across and then mirror it upside down, unless it's not symmetrical in all those axes. And this part gets kind of messy. Sometimes you get carried away and spend a lot of times on parts that are not as important. But I'm basically, my inner jigsaw puzzle enthusiast that's buried deep inside got a little carried away trying to figure out that geometry. I did get it to work, it's just very ugly. And then I'm trying to use the relax brush tool, but that didn't really work too well, so I ended up just manually tweaking it. And then, after I did all that, I suddenly thought of the Boolean idea, spending a little while seeing what happens if I use a Boolean. Again, spoiler alert, I end up just going back to the first one. Because I realized that I wasted a lot of time and I don't feel like looking at this one part anymore. And now this is just an idea I had in my head, so I've this wasn't necessarily the most important thing on the model by any means, but I'm just kind of trying out making this kind of look like the base of a headphone jack or whatever you might want to call it. There are other things that use that too. And the last thing I'm doing for right now is duplicating and seeing if I can repurpose the shoulder stuff for the leg, which I will end up doing. So the reason I didn't make this real time is because that took well over an hour, or that was almost like 2 hours worth of work condensed down into 12 minutes or so. So I know it's hard to watch all that in full speed, but there's a lot of thinking that goes into that stuff that just takes a lot of time, and it's not very interesting to watch. So I'm going to continue this video some other time, but that's all I have in me for this recording. And if I don't get to finish the rest of the character in video format, then I just wanted to give some tips or just a little bit of insight into how I was going about to start modeling my character. Alright, well, I guess that's about it for this video. I'll catch you next time.